So in this next segment, we're going to continue with the elements of Gothic literature, and we're going to start off with the roles of women. We have those normal archetypal figures that are in literature, and in the case of Gothic literature, we have the mother figure, and she's not necessarily a mother, but she's someone who cares for people. She cooks, she cleans, she heals the wounded. She's very motherly to the main characters, and usually it's to the protagonist, and sometimes it's to the antagonist, and she just doesn't know that he's the bad guy. She can also be very evil, and she can appear to be innocent and then end up being evil in the end. Or she's a temptress and she likes to seduce the men in the story and get them to do her bad deeds for her. And the final role that we have for women is the innocent and pure one. She's nice and good and clean and pure, and she often wears white because we like to be very symbolic in literature. So then we're going to go to dualities, and these dualities are within personalities. So it's usually of the character. We have moral versus immoral. So they're not really sure, should they do good things? Should they do bad things? And I say things, but usually those things mean murder or sabotage or hurting someone. And we have mortal versus immortal. So staying alive versus living for, dying versus living forever. That's kind of like the case in Frankenstein and Edward in Twilight. We also have reason versus emotion. So should we think clearly and make good, honest choices, or should we just go out and do whatever we want to do and act on our emotions? And this is usually a problem that is revealed through dreams and through regression, through daydreaming. And then we have order versus disorder. And sometimes this presents itself as being very orderly in the lifestyle, but within the person's mind, they're very disordered and disorganized, and they're not really sure what's going on. And you can see that in the picture here. We have a lot of different heads in the one head, and those are the dualities, and we have these contrasts all the time in our characters. And we also have pleasure versus pain. So gaining pleasure from pain or gaining pain from pleasure, it can go back and forth. A lot of times the antagonist will gain pleasure from the pain that they inflict on the others. Next, we have dreams in the unconscious mind, and this works with Freudian undertones. So it's that repressed sexual desires, and these are expressed to us through the person's dreams and daydreams, like I was saying earlier. And these dreams, these daydreams, these wandering mind thoughts, and these regressed fantasies allow us to understand what our main characters' fears, what their desires are, what their deepest issues are, what their psychological dilemmas are. It lets us know who they really are as a person. And the narrator can often tell us what these dreams are, but sometimes the narrators don't always know the reality. So don't get confused. For these Freudian undertones, though, you might want to do a little bit extra research because, again, this is just a quick survey. Freud liked to talk about Oedipus complexes and falling in love with a mother. So just you might want to look at it, but I don't really want to get into it here. Just know that dreams are telling the truth. They're telling us what the person really wants to do or what they're really thinking. And then we have our life progression. And these are going to go from childhood to adolescence, from pre-adolescence to courtship, from adolescence to adulthood, from adulthood to death. A lot of the stories will start at one point and then they'll span a period of time. Like in The Rose for Emily, that was published a lot later than the Gothic era, but it's a very Southern Gothic story. And it started off very early in Emily's life and it ended at her death. So what happens next, and how do we know what it is? Is it Gothic or is it horror? We all watch those slasher films when they come out, but how do you know if it's Gothic and how do you know if it's just a slasher horror flick? Well, in order to tell, you have to know that horror without a purpose is just horror. It's just a slasher film. It's just meant to either quickly scare you or to gross you out. But horror with a purpose is Gothic. It's going to have a parable of some kind, a fable or a moral. If you learn a lesson, if there is some kind of redemption, it becomes Gothic. You put all of these elements together, or a good majority, it is Gothic.